Suzanne Morphew. On Mother's Day 2020, a Colorado wife vanished during a bike ride. But within hours, investigators suspected something far darker than a simple missing person case. What they would uncover would reveal a marriage built on secrets, lies, and ultimately, tranquilizers meant for wild animals. Suzanne Morphew, a 49-year-old mother from Salida, Colorado, was reported missing on May 10, 2020. Her husband Barry claimed she had gone for a bike ride and never returned. The timing seemed tragic, vanishing on Mother's Day while her two daughters were away. But as investigators began piecing together the hours before her disappearance, the picture that emerged painted a very different story. Barry told investigators he had left early that morning for a work trip to Broomfield, sending Suzanne a Happy Mother's Day text that went unanswered. He claimed concern when she didn't respond, eventually returning home when a neighbor reported she was missing. Deputies found Suzanne's mountain bike in a ravine near their home, but the scene felt staged. The bike showed minimal damage for what should have been a serious crash. What investigators discovered next would crack open the facade of the Morphew marriage. Cell phone records revealed Suzanne had been having a 2-year affair with Jeff Libler, a man from Michigan she had reconnected with from high school. More damning were the text messages between Suzanne and friends in the months before she vanished, describing her unhappiness and fear. In one message, she wrote, "I feel no peace when he's here, and I would not feel safe alone with him." Just 4 days before she disappeared, Suzanne had texted Barry a message he later deleted. "I'm done. I could care less what you're up to and have been for years. We just need to figure this out civilly." The investigation into Barry's movements revealed troubling inconsistencies. Digital data from his truck showed irregular activity around the time of Suzanne's disappearance. Surveillance footage captured him making multiple stops in Broomfield, throwing items into different trash cans and dumpsters, behavior that seemed designed to dispose of evidence. When questioned, Barry offered a bizarre explanation for his erratic phone data near their home the day before Suzanne vanished. He claimed he had been shooting chipmunks with a tranquilizer gun. That tranquilizer gun would become central to the case. Investigators found the weapon in Barry's home, along with a tranquilizer dart cap discovered in the couple's dryer. But Suzanne's body remained missing for over 3 years, and without a victim, proving circumstances proved extraordinarily difficult. Barry was first charged in 2021, but those charges were dismissed in 2022 due to prosecutorial issues. Then came the breakthrough. In September 2023, investigators discovered Suzanne's skeletal remains in a shallow grave near Moffat, Colorado, less than an hour from the Morphew home. The location, a remote area known as the Boneyard, suggested intimate knowledge of the terrain. The autopsy would reveal the smoking gun investigators needed. Testing on Suzanne's bone marrow found traces of BAM, a combination of butorphanol, azaparone, and medetomidine used to sedate wild animals. The tranquilizer had been metabolized before her passing, meaning she had been alive when it entered her system. Forensic experts determined her body had been moved at least twice after she passed, with decomposition occurring in a different location before being relocated to the grave. The most damning evidence came from prescription records. Investigators searched for anyone in the region who had access to BAM prescriptions between 2017 and 2020. The result was shocking. Barry Morphew was the only private citizen in that entire area of Colorado who possessed BAM. His last purchase had been in March 2018, and he admitted to using it illegally to sedate deer and remove their antlers for sale. In June 2025, a grand jury indicted Barry Morphew on first-degree homicide charges, He was arrested in Arizona and extradited to Colorado. The indictment painted a chilling picture. Barry had tranquilized Suzanne, chased her through their home, evidenced by a broken doorframe, and ended her life before carefully moving her body multiple times to avoid detection. Barry's defense attorney called it a predetermined conclusion and maintained his client's innocence. Barry himself has consistently denied involvement, claiming he was a loving husband. But the evidence suggests a man consumed by jealousy over his wife's affair, facing the prospect of divorce and exposure. As of late 2025, Barry awaits trial on $3 million bail, while 12th Judicial District Attorney Ann Kelly stated that federal, state, and local law enforcement have never stopped working toward justice for Suzanne. But not all cases have surveillance video. Some happen in the dead of night, where only the perpetrator knows what really occurred. Missy Bevers. On April 18, 2016, fitness instructor Terry Missy Bevers arrived at Creekside Church of Christ in Midlothian, Texas at 4:18 a.m. during a thunderstorm. She was there to set up for her 5 a.m. Camp Gladiator fitness class, which she had moved indoors due to the weather and posted about online. Students arriving for class an hour later found Missy's body inside the church, suffering from puncture wounds to her head and chest. She was 45 years old, a mother of 3, and had no known enemies. But the truly chilling element of this case was already recorded. Church surveillance cameras had captured a figure dressed in full tactical gear, including a helmet, gloves, and clothing marked "Police," wandering through the church halls starting around 4 a.m. The person could be seen breaking glass doors, prying open others with what appeared to be a hammer, and moving with a distinctive gait that would become central to the investigation. The footage shows the suspect casually walking through corridors, seemingly in no hurry, opening doors and checking rooms. The gear appeared authentic: tactical pants, boots, a vest, and protective equipment that obscured nearly every identifying feature. The gait caught investigators' attention immediately. A slightly awkward walk that could suggest injury, the weight of the gear, or perhaps a deliberate attempt to disguise natural movement. The circumstances pointed to a targeted attack rather than random opportunity. Nothing was stolen from the church, and Missy's purse and iPad were left behind. The timing was precise. The suspect arrived just before Missy and appeared to know exactly when she would be there. The fact that she had publicly posted about moving the class indoors due to weather suggested someone had been monitoring her social media or knew her routine intimately. Police initially believed the suspect was male based on build and height, but later analysis suggested possible female characteristics. An FBI podiatrist analysis in 2021 examined the gait extensively, but ultimately deemed gender indeterminate from the footage alone. The tactical gear made traditional identification nearly impossible. No clear view of facial features, hair, or skin tone. Additional surveillance emerged from the investigation. A nearby store's security camera captured a 2010 to 2012 Nissan Altima circling the area around 2 a.m., 2 hours before the attack. The vehicle and its driver have never been identified, and as of 2023, this lead remains unresolved. Investigators uncovered potential motives in Missy's personal life. Search warrants revealed she had received creepy LinkedIn messages from an unknown male, though these were ultimately deemed innocuous. The warrants also suggested evidence of smartphone tracking of her schedule, indicating someone had been following her movements closely. Was this a jealous rival? An obsessed acquaintance? Someone from her fitness community? Family members came under scrutiny, as they often do in such cases. Missy's husband Brandon was in Mississippi on a fishing trip at the time. His alibi was verified. Her father-in-law, Randy, was questioned after a shirt with what appeared to be blood was found, but testing revealed it was canine blood, and he was cleared. The investigation examined her fitness clients, friends, and acquaintances, but no solid suspect emerged. Over 3,000 tips have been received since 2016, with the reward climbing to $150,000. The Midlothian Police Department has insisted the case remains active, not cold. Police Chief Carl Smith has stated publicly that they continue pursuing leads, though nearly a decade has passed without an arrest. The case has gained significant attention from true crime communities, with amateur sleuths analyzing every frame of the surveillance footage. Some theorize the tactical gear was chosen specifically to obscure identity, while providing an excuse to be inside the church if discovered early. Others believe the awkward gait was deliberately exaggerated to throw off analysis. The most popular theory suggests someone with a personal connection to Missy, perhaps related to marital issues or fitness class dynamics, who planned meticulously to avoid detection. What remains clear is that this was no random burglary gone wrong. The staging of a break-in, the timing of the arrival, and the brutal nature of the attack all point to someone who wanted Missy specifically gone. The surveillance footage, while chilling to watch, has proven both a blessing and a curse, providing irrefutable proof someone was there, yet frustratingly insufficient for positive identification. As of late 2025, Missy's case remains unsolved, with a masked figure in police gear remaining one of the most haunting images in modern true crime. While Missy's case had surveillance footage, sometimes children vanish with barely a trace left behind. Oakley Carlson. In October 2025, a Washington state court made an unusual declaration. A young person who had been missing since February 2021 was officially deceased. The child had vanished under circumstances that pointed to parental involvement, yet no body had been found, no charges filed, and the parents maintained conflicting stories about what happened. Oakley Carlson had been removed from her biological parents' care and placed in foster care in 2017 when she was an infant. Her foster mother, Jamie Jo Hiles, raised her with love from infancy through early childhood. But in 2019, despite ongoing welfare concerns, Oakley was returned to her biological parents, Jordan Bowers and Andrew Carlson. It would prove to be a fatal decision. In February 2021, Oakley vanished. Her parents provided conflicting and ultimately false statements about her whereabouts. In one version, they claimed she had been eaten by wolves. In another, they said they had given her away to someone else. Neither story held up under investigation. Welfare workers who attempted to check on Oakley were turned away or given excuses. Neighbors reported not seeing the youngster for months. The investigation revealed disturbing patterns. Jordan Bowers and Andrew Carlson were convicted of crimes against Oakley's siblings, demonstrating a pattern of harm within the household. But crucially, neither parent has been charged directly in connection with Oakley's disappearance. The reason is straightforward. Without a body or forensic evidence of what happened, prosecutors face an enormous challenge in pursuing charges. Bowers served 13 months for identity theft and was released in September 2025, placed under supervision. Her release sparked both hope and fear among advocates. Hope that freedom might prompt her to reveal what happened to Oakley, and fear that justice might never be served. The court's decision to declare Oakley deceased in summer 2025 shocked even those who had been following the case closely. Foster mother Jamie Jo Hiles called the declaration secret and shady. suggesting it might be financially motivated to access certain records for investigations into the harm done to Oakley's siblings. A Pacific County court made the declaration to facilitate access to sealed records that might prove relevant to ongoing cases involving the other offspring. Hiles, who had raised Oakley from infancy, expressed hope that continued public attention might finally break the case. "I hope that they just keep seeing Oakley's face and maybe they just are like, okay, I need to come forward." She described a happy youngster who loved life and deserved so much better than what happened after being returned to her biological parents. The Grays Harbor Sheriff's Office has stated they consider the case a potential no-body homicide and view both parents as suspects due to their lack of cooperation. A $100,000 reward remains in place for information leading to Oakley's whereabouts or evidence of what happened to her. The case highlights systemic failures in protective services. A youngster removed from care due to legitimate concerns, only to be returned despite red flags, and then vanishing without accountability. Advocates have noted the missing while black disparities that often plague such cases, where certain disappearances receive far less attention and resources than others. Hiles finds the legal declaration of passing particularly troubling because it was done without a body, without evidence of what specifically happened, and seemingly for bureaucratic purposes rather than to bring closure or justice. It feels, she suggests, like giving up on finding answers. As of late 2025, no arrests have been made in connection with Oakley's disappearance, and both parents remain persons of interest but not charged. Somewhere in Washington state, the truth of what happened to Oakley Carlson remains known only to those who refuse to speak. From cases with suspects but no charges, we turn to a disappearance that has baffled investigators for over 2 decades. Maura Murray. On February 9, 2004, 21-year-old UMass nursing student Maura Murray crashed her car on Route 112 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. A local bus driver stopped to offer help. She declined, claiming AA was coming. When police arrived minutes later, Maura was gone. Her car locked with wine stains inside, directions to Vermont, and a rag stuffed in the exhaust pipe. She has never been seen again, and her disappearance has become one of the most analyzed and debated missing person cases in American history. Maura's life in the days before her disappearance showed signs of significant stress. She had been involved in a prior car crash, faced a credit fraud charge, and was dealing with a recent breakup. On the day she vanished, she had emailed her professors claiming a family emergency, but no such emergency existed. She withdrew money, packed belongings, and drove north from Massachusetts with alcohol and personal items, behavior suggesting either escape or something more permanent. The last confirmed contact was a voicemail check at 4:37 p.m. Less than 3 hours later, she crashed her car and disappeared. A tracking canine followed her scent approximately 100 yards east of the crash site before losing the trail, suggesting she may have gotten into a vehicle. A witness later reported seeing someone matching Maura's description several miles away, but this sighting was never confirmed. The theories about what happened to Maura Murray are as numerous as they are contradictory. Early police investigators leaned toward voluntary disappearance or self-harm, citing her preparations and the false family emergency. The packed belongings, withdrawn money, and deliberate departure from campus suggested someone planning to vanish. But her family has always rejected this theory. Maura's sister, Julie Murray, has become a vocal advocate, launching a 2024 podcast examining the case. She firmly believes in abduction. The family consensus is that she encountered someone harmful. Julie's theory gained support when evidence emerged of Maura's fear and stress in the weeks before her disappearance? Was she running from something specific? The FBI joined the investigation in 2004, and by 2009, authorities began treating the case as a likely homicide. Extensive searches of the surrounding wilderness yielded nothing conclusive. In 2022, bone fragments were discovered and tested, but did not belong to Maura. Then, in 2025, came a potential breakthrough. A fingerprint found at or near the crash scene was linked to a former West Point cadet, raising new questions about whether Maura's time at the military academy, which she left after an honor code violation, might have been relevant to her disappearance. This development remains under investigation, but it suggests possibilities previously unconsidered. Julie Murray has been critical of the initial investigation, arguing that police focused their searches too narrowly to the west of the crash site and overlooked crucial leads. She points to items found in Maura's car, including directions and a number for a condo, as clues that investigators dismissed too quickly. Could Maura have been meeting someone? Was the crash truly an accident, or was she fleeing from someone? In 2024, authorities released age-progressed images showing what Maura might look like now, keeping hope alive that she might still be found. But most investigators and family members believe the sad reality is that Maura likely passed shortly after her disappearance, either from environmental exposure in the harsh New Hampshire winter or at the hands of someone who encountered her on that dark rural road. The case has been called the first crime mystery of the social media age, generating countless online theories, amateur investigations, and competing narratives. Some believe Maura planned to disappear and succeeded. Others point to the rag in the exhaust, possibly an attempt to produce carbon monoxide, as evidence of intentions toward self-harm. The most widely accepted theory among law enforcement is that Maura, vulnerable and alone on a dark road, was picked up by someone with harmful intentions. What makes Maura's case particularly haunting is how close she came to help. The bus driver who stopped literally spoke with her minutes before she vanished. If she had accepted his assistance, if police had arrived seconds earlier, if she had stayed with the vehicle, the entire trajectory might have been different. Instead, Maura Murray walked away from that crash scene and into one of the most enduring mysteries of the 21st century. More than 20 years later, her family still seeks answers, still hopes for closure, and still believes that somewhere, someone knows what happened that February night. While Maura's disappearance happened without witnesses to her actual vanishing, the next case involves someone who left home and was never seen again, but suspicion immediately fell on family. Alyssa Turney. On May 17, 2001, 17-year-old Alyssa Turney disappeared from Phoenix, Arizona, leaving behind a note claiming she was running away to California. The note read, "Sarah, you said you didn't want me around. Look, you got it. I'm gone." Her stepfather, Michael Turney, claimed she had called him crying after the argument, but no record of such a call exists. Alyssa has never been seen or heard from again, and for over 2 decades, her family has fought to prove that the runaway story was a carefully constructed lie. Alyssa's childhood was marked by tragedy and control. Her mother Barbara died of illness when Alyssa was young, leaving her to be raised by her stepfather Michael, alongside siblings, including her sister Sarah. Michael, an electrician with a military background, ran the household with iron-fisted authority. But what appeared to be strict parenting masked something far more disturbing. Michael had installed surveillance cameras throughout the home, monitoring Alyssa's every move. He videotaped her without her knowledge and consent, and when allegations arose, had Alyssa sign a contract at a young age, denying that he had harmed her. Friends would later report that Alyssa had confided fears about Michael's behavior toward her, painting a picture of a household where control masked something sinister. The day Alyssa vanished, she was picked up early from Paradise Valley High School by Michael. He claimed there had been an argument over her job at Jack in the Box, where he disapproved of her supposedly flirting with customers. The runaway note appeared to explain her departure, and for years, the case was treated as exactly that, a teenage runaway who simply never came home. But Sarah Turney never believed the runaway story. As she grew older and began to examine her stepfather's behavior more critically, disturbing patterns emerged. The surveillance, the control, the inappropriate attention toward Alyssa, it all pointed to a man obsessed with his stepdaughter in deeply troubling ways. Sarah began to suspect that Michael had harmed Alyssa and staged the runaway scenario to cover his actions. In 2008, a raid on Michael's home uncovered shocking evidence: explosives, silencers, and a manifesto in which he blamed a union for Alyssa's kidnapping. The manifesto suggested Michael had constructed an alternative narrative where outside forces had taken Alyssa, deflecting suspicion from himself. The weapons charges landed him in prison, but still no charges were filed regarding Alyssa's disappearance. There was no body, no forensic evidence, and the case had gone cold. Then came social media. In 2020, Sarah began posting viral TikTok videos about her sister's case, bringing massive attention to Alyssa's disappearance and Michael's suspicious behavior. The videos painted a damning picture of Michael's obsession and control, and the attention they generated reignited the investigation. August 2020, Michael Turney was arrested and charged with second-degree homicide in connection with Alyssa's disappearance. After nearly 2 decades, it seemed justice might finally be served. Prosecutors presented evidence of Michael's surveillance, his concerning behavior toward Alyssa, and the theory that he had ended her life to prevent her from exposing inappropriate conduct. But in July 2023, the case collapsed. A jury acquitted Michael Turney, citing insufficient evidence to prove beyond reasonable doubt that he had ended Alyssa's life. Michael's defense successfully argued, there wasn't any physical evidence because it just didn't happen. Without a body, without forensic proof, and with the passage of over 20 years, the prosecution couldn't meet the burden of proof required for conviction. Sarah Turney expressed devastation at the verdict, stating, "Every system designed to protect Alyssa failed her." The sentiment captures the frustration of a case where suspicion is strong but proof is elusive. Friends had reported Alyssa's fears. Michael's own son James has described him as a master manipulator. The surveillance equipment, the contract denying harm, the manifesto, the controlling behavior, all of it points toward a man capable of the unthinkable. Experts on coercive control, including researcher Evan Stark, have called Michael's behavior toward Alyssa textbook examples of psychological manipulation and control. The pattern fits: isolate the victim, monitor constantly, establish dominance, and when exposure threatens, eliminate the problem. But proving this pattern led to homicide without physical evidence or a body proved impossible. Michael maintains his innocence, claiming he was merely a strict parent dealing with a difficult teenager. "I was strict because she needed it." He lives quietly in Arizona, a free man despite being at the center of one of the state's most controversial cases. Sarah continues her advocacy, keeping Alyssa's case in the public eye and pushing for legal reforms around coercive control and circumstantial evidence in no-body homicide cases. As of late 2025, Alyssa Turney remains missing, her whereabouts unknown, and her family left without justice or closure. While that case involved family suspicion, the next mystery would begin with a choice no one could explain. Asha Degree. On February 14, 2000, a young person left her Shelby, North Carolina home around 3 a.m., walking along Highway 18 in a storm. Multiple witnesses spotted someone matching her description, walking alone in the darkness and rain. She has never been seen again, and for 25 years, one question has haunted investigators and her family. Why would someone leave a warm, safe home in the middle of a stormy night? Asha Jakila Degree lived what appeared to be a stable, happy life. She excelled in school and basketball, living with her parents Harold and Aquila, and brother O'Brien in a close religious family. Friends and teachers described her as shy but adventurous, responsible and well cared for. There were no signs of trouble at home, no indication she was unhappy or planning to leave. Yet on that Valentine's Day morning, she walked out into the storm. Witnesses reported seeing her walking along the highway around 4 a.m. When one driver stopped to check on her, she reportedly ran into the woods, appearing frightened. The sightings placed her miles from home, walking with apparent purpose despite the dangerous conditions. Then she vanished completely, as if the storm had swallowed her whole. In August 2001, 18 months after her disappearance, Asha's backpack was discovered wrapped in plastic and buried in Burke County. Inside were her name, a library book, and personal items. The backpack had been carefully preserved and deliberately hidden, suggesting whoever took Asha knew investigators would be searching. The location was significant. Not along the highway where she disappeared, a different area entirely. For years, the case remained cold despite extensive searches and nationwide attention. Theories ranged from abduction by a stranger to someone Asha knew luring her out that night. The mystery of why she left home voluntarily, if indeed she did, remained unsolved. Then in 2024 came a breakthrough that would change everything. Hair found on Asha's backpack was subjected to advanced DNA analysis and linked to Annalee Dedman Ramirez. This connection led investigators to the Dedman family, who lived in the area at the time of Asha's disappearance. In February 2025, explosive new evidence emerged through search warrants. Text messages between Dedman family members revealed conversations that suggested knowledge of what happened to Asha. In these messages, family members discussed the theory that one of them was involved. Most chilling was a text stating, "The theory is I did it. Accident. Covered it up." The messages showed anxiety about the investigation and suggested family members were aware of details they shouldn't know if uninvolved. The warrants also revealed that a witness heard Lizzie Foster, one of the Dedman daughters, say, "I killed Asha Degree" at a party. While such statements could be dark humor or false confession combined with the DNA evidence and text messages, they took on sinister significance. The warrants allege obstruction by Foster and her sister Sarah Capel, suggesting family members worked to hide the truth. The emerging theory suggests a hit-and-run scenario followed by a cover-up. Perhaps Asha was walking that night, for reasons still unknown, when a vehicle struck her. Rather than reporting the incident, the driver and potentially family members made the devastating choice to hide what happened. The backpack burial, the preserved evidence, the years of silence, all point to conscious decisions to conceal rather than reveal. The Dedman family has denied involvement, claiming the DNA and circumstances are coincidental. They gave interviews in July 2025 maintaining their innocence and suggesting the investigation was targeting them unfairly. Parents Roy and Connie Degree remain suspicious, though authorities have stopped short of naming them as direct suspects. A $75,000 reward remains in place for information, and billboards with Asha's face were installed in September 2025, increasing the reward to $100,000. Despite the DNA evidence, the text messages, and the witness statements, no arrests have been made as of late 2025. The case remains officially unsolved, though investigators clearly believe they know who was involved. Asha's mother, Ikila, has maintained hope that her daughter might still be alive, though most investigators believe she passed shortly after her disappearance that February night. The most heartbreaking aspect is that we still don't know why Asha left home that night. Was she lured out by someone she trusted? Was she sleepwalking? Did she have a reason that made sense to her but remains mysterious to everyone else? Those answers may lie with the Dedmon family, locked behind years of silence and alleged cover-up. For Asha's family, the wait for justice continues. If you've made it this far and enjoyed deep dives into the most shocking criminal cases, hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the bell icon. From a disappearance that happened in darkness, we move to one that occurred in broad daylight. Amber Hagerman. On January 13, 1996, a young person was riding her bicycle near her grandmother's home in Arlington, Texas, when she was taken in front of a witness. Jimmy Kevill was in his backyard when he heard a scream and saw a man grab the youngster, throw her bike down, and force her into a black pickup truck. Kevill immediately called police, providing a description of the vehicle and the abductor. It would be the last time anyone saw Amber Hagerman alive. Amber's body was found 4 days later, on January 17th, in a creek bed. The autopsy revealed she had been kept alive for approximately 48 hours after her abduction, before being killed. The manner of her passing was brutal. Her throat had been slashed. The medical examiner's findings suggested she had been held somewhere during those 2 days, though the location was never determined. The witness description provided investigators with their primary lead: a white or Hispanic male in his 20s to 30s, under 6 feet tall, driving a dark pickup truck. Despite this relatively detailed description and the public nature of the abduction, the case quickly stalled. In the days before surveillance cameras were ubiquitous, and with limited forensic technology in the mid-90s, the trail went cold. Over 7,000 tips have been received over the years, and DNA evidence was collected from the crime scene. However, without a suspect to compare it against, the DNA sat unused for years. As technology advanced, investigators hoped genetic genealogy, the same technique used to identify the Golden State Killer, might finally provide answers. In 2025, detectives expressed renewed hope that new DNA technology could break the case. The case remains active, not cold, with investigators continuing to pursue leads. The Arlington Police Department has maintained that someone, somewhere, knows what happened. They believe the abductor was likely local to the area, given his knowledge of the neighborhood and the nearby creek where Amber was found. The random, opportunistic nature of the crime suggests a predator who saw a vulnerable target and acted impulsively. But Amber Hagerman's legacy extends far beyond her unsolved case. In the wake of her passing, Dallas-Fort Worth radio station KRLD partnered with local authorities to create the Amber Alert System, a broadcast emergency response that sends immediate notifications when someone is reported abducted. The system, named in Amber's honor, quickly spread nationwide and then internationally. By 2024, the Amber Alert System had successfully helped recover 1,221 individuals, Each recovery represents a family spared the anguish that Amber's family has endured. Every alert that brings someone home safely is a testament to Amber's legacy. That from unimaginable tragedy came a system that has saved countless lives. Amber's mother, Donna Hagerman, has become an advocate for missing persons, working to ensure the alert system bearing her daughter's name continues to evolve and improve. Her brother Ricky has also spoken publicly about how the family keeps Amber's memory alive while hoping that one day justice will finally be served. As of late 2025, Amber's case remains unsolved. The killer has never been identified, never been caught, never been held accountable. But investigators refuse to call it cold, maintaining hope that advancing DNA technology, a new witness coming forward, or a deathbed confession might finally provide the breakthrough needed. The emphasis remains on the witness importance in random crimes. Jimmy Caviezel's immediate call to police provided the only detailed description investigators had to work with. The next case involves not one missing person, but 3 who vanished from the same location. Springfield, 3. On June 7, 1992, 3 people disappeared from a home in Springfield, Missouri, without any signs of struggle or forced entry. Cheryl Levitt, 47, her offspring Susie Streeter, 19, and Susie's friend Stacy McCall, 18, simply vanished. Their purses were inside. Their cars were in the driveway. The family dog was unharmed. A broken porch light and an erased answering machine message were the only signs anything was amiss. More than 3 decades later, the case remains one of America's most baffling disappearances. The circumstances leading up to the disappearance were completely ordinary. Susie and Stacy had just graduated from high school and attended parties celebrating their graduation. They decided to spend the night at Levitt's house rather than with other friends as originally planned. They arrived late, around 2 a.m., and that was the last confirmed sighting of either young woman. Levitt had been home alone that evening. By morning, all 3 were gone. Friends arrived the next morning to pick up Susie and Stacy for a planned trip to a water park. When no one answered, they entered the unlocked home. Everything appeared normal. Beds were made. Purses with money and identification sat undisturbed. The women's vehicles were parked outside. But the women themselves were nowhere to be found. Disturbingly, someone had erased the answering machine, potentially destroying the last message the women received. The crime scene was unfortunately compromised. Friends and family members entered the home, moved items, and even cleaned up broken glass from the porch light before police arrived. This well-intentioned but damaging contamination made forensic analysis nearly impossible. Any evidence that might have been present was obscured or destroyed by the multiple people who walked through the house that morning. Over 5,000 tips have been received over the years, with a $43,000 reward offered for information. Multiple suspects have been investigated, each bringing their own theories about what happened that night. Dustin Rekla, Susie's ex-boyfriend, became a person of interest with potential motive related to a past incident where Susie may have been a witness. His alibi was verified, but suspicion lingered. Serial offender Larry Hall, who has been connected to multiple disappearances of women in the Midwest, has been investigated for potential involvement. Hall's patterns and timeline put him in the region during the period the women vanished, but no physical evidence has linked him to the case. Robert Cox, another convicted offender, claimed to have knowledge of what happened but never provided credible information. Gerald Carnahan, who committed similar crimes in the area during the same time period, became another suspect of interest. Carnahan's method of operation, targeting women in their homes, matched the Springfield 3 case. However, he has never been charged, and evidence connecting him remains circumstantial. The prevailing theories suggest targeted abduction rather than random chance. 3 people don't disappear without a trace unless someone planned it carefully. The lack of struggle suggests the women were controlled quickly, possibly at gunpoint. The erased message hints at communication that might have lured them into a trap or indicated the perpetrator's identity. The intact purses and vehicles suggest the women expected to return. This wasn't a voluntary disappearance. In 1997, the 3 women were legally declared deceased, allowing families to pursue legal matters and find some bureaucratic closure. But without bodies, without physical evidence, and with a contaminated crime scene, the case remained frozen in time. No arrests, no charges, no resolution. One persistent theory involves a gravesite at a Springfield hospital parking garage. Anonymous tips suggested the women might be buried there, but authorities have been reluctant to excavate due to cost, disruption, and the questionable reliability of the tips. The garage remains standing, and the possibility, however remote, that answers lie beneath the concrete continues to haunt investigators and families. As of late 2025, tips still trickle in, and the Springfield Police Department maintains the case as active. While the Springfield case baffles with its lack of evidence, the next case is infamous for its brutality. Elizabeth Short. On January 15, 1947, a woman's body was found in Leimert Park, Los Angeles, bisected at the waist, drained of blood, and posed in a grotesque display. The victim's face bore a Glasgow smile, cuts extending from the corners of her mouth to her ears. The precision of the cuts suggested medical knowledge or experience with bodies. The case would become one of the most notorious unsolved cases in American history. Elizabeth Betty Short was 22 years old, born July 29, 1924, in Medford, Massachusetts. Her childhood was difficult. Her father had faked his own passing to abandon the family, leaving her mother to raise 5 daughters in poverty. Betty moved to California with dreams of becoming an actress, part of the post-war influx of hopefuls drawn to Hollywood's promise. She became known for her black hair and clothing, living a transient lifestyle while pursuing acting opportunities. She was last seen at the Biltmore Hotel in Los Angeles on January 9, 1947. 6 days later, her body was discovered in a vacant lot, and the case exploded into national headlines. The investigation became massive. 750 investigators from LAPD and FBI were involved, examining over 150 suspects. The case generated unprecedented media coverage, earning Elizabeth the posthumous nickname Black Dahlia from newspapers capitalizing on public fascination. This media circus would ultimately hamper the investigation, as sensationalism clouded facts and encouraged false confessions. Taunting letters were sent to newspapers and police, some including Elizabeth's belongings. One package contained her purse, identification, and other personal items, along with a note. Whether these came from the actual perpetrator or an opportunistic hoaxer has never been determined, but they added to the case's mystique and confusion. The suspects have ranged from the plausible to the absurd. George Hodel, a doctor, became a prime suspect when recordings emerged of him making incriminating statements, including, "Supposin' I did kill the Black Dahlia." His son, former LAPD detective Steve Hodel, has written extensively about his father's suspected involvement, presenting circumstantial evidence connecting him to the case. The medical precision of the cuts, George Hodell's surgical knowledge, and his documented aberrant behavior all point toward possible involvement. Other suspects have included organized crime figures like Bugsy Siegel, though no evidence supports these theories. Even filmmaker Orson Welles was briefly investigated, though quickly cleared. The case became a magnet for conspiracy theories, each more elaborate than the last. Theories about serial connections emerged, particularly to the Cleveland Torso murders, a series of cases in the 1930s and 40s involving bisected bodies. The similarities in method suggested a possible link, but again, no definitive evidence connected the cases. The medical precision and body positioning suggested someone comfortable with anatomy and death, possibly a physician, mortician, or someone with military medical training. The case's sensationalism has obscured the human tragedy at its center. Elizabeth Short was a young woman pursuing dreams in a difficult post-war era. She struggled financially, relied on the kindness of acquaintances, and lived on the margins of Hollywood society. Whatever led her to the vacant lot in Leimert Park that January night, she deserved justice that has never come. As of 2025, new analyses continue to focus on suspects like George Hodell, with books and investigations revisiting the evidence. Forensic details about the surgical skill required for the bisection reinforce theories about medical knowledge. But nearly 80 years later, the case remains officially unsolved, with the perpetrator almost certainly deceased. Our final case takes us to the 1970s and a restaurant where 4 people vanished during their shift. Burger Chef murders. On November 17, 1978, 4 employees working the closing shift at a Burger Chef restaurant in Speedway, Indiana, vanished. Jane Freet, 20, was the shift manager. Daniel Davis and Mark Flemons, both 16, and Ruth Shelton, 17, were working with her. When the restaurant was found open the next morning with money in the registers but the employees gone, it initially seemed like an elaborate prank. 2 days later, their bodies were discovered in a Johnson County field, and the grim reality became clear. Jane had been stabbed, Ruth and Daniel shot, and Mark beaten. Approximately $581 was missing from the restaurant, a relatively small amount to motivate 4 deaths. The crime appeared to be a robbery that escalated catastrophically, with the employees taken from the restaurant and driven to the remote field where they were killed. The initial investigation suffered from critical errors. The crime scene at the restaurant was initially dismissed as a prank, allowing crucial hours to pass before it was treated as a serious incident. Members of the public entered the restaurant, contaminating potential evidence. By the time investigators realized something terrible had happened, valuable forensic evidence had been compromised or destroyed. The leading theory involved a robbery gang operating in the area at the time. Multiple fast food restaurants had been targeted, though none with such deadly results. In 1984, a man named Donald Forrester confessed to the crimes, providing details that matched the evidence. His confession seemed credible. He knew things about the case that hadn't been made public. But in 1986, Forrester recanted his confession, claiming it was false. Another theory suggested Jane's sibling was involved in matters that led to her being targeted, with the other employees as tragic collateral damage. This theory suggested the robbery was a cover for a more personal motive. However, no evidence has ever substantiated this claim, and it remains speculation. The case has haunted investigators for decades. Retired Detective Stoney Vann, who worked the case, stated, "This is the type of case that I will take to my grave." The statement captures the frustration of knowing what likely happened, a robbery by criminals already in the area, but being unable to prove it or identify the specific perpetrators. As forensic technology has advanced, investigators have hoped that evidence collected from the crime scenes might finally yield answers. The case remains active, with periodic reviews and application of new forensic techniques. But nearly 5 decades later, no arrests have been made, and the prime suspects have likely aged out or passed away. The Burger Chef case highlights how seemingly routine situations can turn deadly in moments. 4 young people showed up for work shifts they'd worked dozens of times before. They probably laughed, complained about customers, and made plans for after work. Then someone entered with a weapon and bad intentions, and everything changed. The robbery could have ended with money taken and employees tied up. Instead, for reasons we may never fully understand, it ended with 4 young people driven to a field and killed. Recent podcasts and documentaries have revisited the case, keeping public attention alive. Each retelling brings hope that someone who knows something might finally come forward. Perhaps someone who was involved peripherally, who kept quiet out of fear or loyalty, will decide after all these years that justice matters more than silence. As of late 2025, the Burger Chef murders remain unsolved. 4 families still wait for answers about why their loved ones never came home from work that November night. 4 people who simply wanted to earn money and live their lives were taken by someone who has never been held accountable. This was all from our side today. Thanks for watching. Click here to check out another video.